Hey guys, do you ever get that feeling whenever you know you're supposed to be doing something that all of a sudden, out of nowhere, every fiber of your being absolutely doesn't want it? I got that for this video, and I figured instead of actually making a manga like I should be, let's talk about the things I used to make it. Let's get started. Alright, now here's all the stuff I have, and I know what you're thinking. Geez, man, that's a lot of stuff. Do I really need all of it? The answer is yes. Realistically, you can just do it with this. Now, I know that there's a lot of stuff here, and I also know that not everyone works the same way. People change up their workflow all of the time, and I just wanted to show what I use and just what it does for me. So, let's get into it. Alright, getting started with the kind of paper I use the Leader A paper. This is standard size manga or comic paper, it works for both, that you can use, and what makes this paper stand out is that it actually has rules and grid lines that you probably can't see too well, but those have outlines and guidelines of where you can put the panels on a page. It's already sized for you, and it even has limits so you know when to stop drawing outside of the lines. I like this paper just because it's made for inking. It kind of has a smooth surface to it, so when you're inking, the ink glides more smoothly, whereas if you were using Bristol paper, the tooth of the paper could kind of break the ink flow. So this is really good paper to use. I know it's industry standard paper. It's thick enough to handle screen tones. I believe it works with markers. Don't quote me on that. But this is the kind of paper that I usually use. And then just here on the side, I have a sketchbook for concept ideas and whatnot. This is just a normal sketchbook. And then I just use Hanson Mixed Media sketchbooks. This is a recycled one, but it's honestly just because I like the green cover. And this is what I use for storyboards. It works really well. It's nothing fancy, it's just ink. And this is so I can organize the story and lay it out. So in short, these become these. Now, what I use to sketch is just right here. I have a very soft pencil lead, so I could just draw here. This is a Strathmore or Stedler. It's a blue pencil, but it's a really light pencil that doesn't make very dark lines, so that way I can outline gestures and stuff without getting too dark into the details. And then I just use 05 lead, which is black. In this clicky pencil, it's just a clicky pencil. Nothing special about it. I mean, I like it because it has a twisty eraser, but that's about it. And I use this to sketch everything out, and this is in a darker lead, so this one is relatively light. I'd say, using digital art terms, this is 10% opacity, this is 70% opacity. And then what I have here is blue lead, which I actually use to outline where screen tones are going to go, because when you scan pages in, the blue won't show up once you add contrast. So I just use that on pages like this to figure out that's where I'm drawing clouds and shade different areas and be like, that's where, this is where the blue is gonna go. And that'll help me figure out where I'm gonna add screen tones. I just use that in a different mechanical pencil, and I just made sure that they look different. So I know that this one has the normal pencil lead in it. This one has the blue pencil lead in it, and that way I'm not just always switching back and forth between them all the time. So now that you have all of your sketching in and it looks lovely and you want to add in those final lines and you're wondering what you're going to do with them, that's what all of these are for. This is what I use for inking, and I use a couple of different things. I don't really just commit to one. I usually use whatever I have around. But the main thing I use is these Sakura Microns. They're a really good pen. They're archival ink, which means they're waterproof, fade-proof, sun-proof, death-proof, smear-proof, meme-proof. These come in different sizes, which is why I have so many of them. They range from 005, which is a really fine point, to 08, which is a relatively thick point, so that way I can alternate from drawing really tiny details in the eyes to maybe the actual outlines of the page. I use those, and then I also use Copic multi-liners, whether it's the SPs or just the disposable ones. It's the same ink, it's just the barrel's a little fancier. These come with refills, which is apparently nice. Now these ones are for more practical effects. So using this page as an example, Copics are really good with the brush point to add in foliage. So I just use foliage there. So that's what I use those for, and also Sharpies to fill in heavy black areas, kind of like in there and with his pants and with the doodads and whatnots. I found, for me, I don't know if everyone does this, but it's really useful for me, just using a ballpoint pen to make motion lines, just because they're very smooth, they're very glidey, and especially if you have pens with a felt tip like this, if you make lines too quickly and under high stress, it can actually ruin the nib and cause the tip to explode, which, honestly, all of my pens are this way. But if you use a ballpoint pen, that'll help you with that. You're not really limited to just that. So I use ballpoint pens just for small details like this with the hair, and then also with the motion lines for stuff that's here. This is another kind of brush pen, but it's not a Copic one. It's from the same company that makes these microns. It's just another kind of brush pen. I like having a variety of stuff, and it's honestly because these are like half dead most of the time. Even though I have refills. And then the last one, which is probably the one that most people know about, is a G pen. I have one. I much more prefer having the lines added manually with these. These do a pretty good job of laying down a flat line, and then I just add line thickness in post. You can get the same effect as this, but I know a lot of people use a G pen, and kudos to you if you can use it. I'm just not that coordinated, so I have it, I don't use it. For more secondary stuff, you have tape to kind of just tape down your pages, tape down vanishing points, or just cover off an area when you're making speed lines or something. Tape is really good to have. Make sure that it's like Scotch tape or masking tape, not tape that will rip your paper in half when you add it and then take it off and then realize that your entire life is a horrible mistake. Here I have just a pencil sharpener because you tend to need those when you draw a lot with pencils. I have different kinds of whiteouts and 2 different kinds of jelly roll pens. So this is just the liter whiteout ink. I usually use this with a brush or actually with a G pen. I know that I said I don't use it too much for inking, but it's actually really good for whiteout. So you can actually use this with this as well. Turns out you can draw in white with pressure sensitivity. And that's really good to do when you're not using these. So I just have a standard jelly roll pen and then a not as standard jelly roll pen. These work really well. They're just whiteouts. This one has a finer tip than this one. But they both work really well, and it's just circumstantial. But I use them both often because I always ink over my line. The unspoken genius in all of this is actually rulers. I have a couple of different rulers and they're all for different things. Here's some French curve rulers, which are really good for adding curved motion lines and just whenever you want to ink that line that's kind of a pain in the butt. So you can use these kinds of curve rulers for specific angles and stuff in the curves if you want them to be consistent, like here. And then I just have rulers varying in size just because sometimes you don't need a ruler that reaches across the room to make a really super tiny straight line. So I have a tiny one, I have a normal ruler, I have a ruler that's like almost a yardstick, and then I have this ruler which is a T-square. It looks like a T, but essentially what this one does is it latches onto the end of the drawing and then it automatically helps you draw a straight line, whether it's up and down, left or right. It catches on, and it's really convenient, and it saves a lot of time when you're drawing perspective because you don't need to measure out 2 different distances and then draw a straight line to make sure the line's leveled. Now, an unspoken champion in all of this is what you tend to do in post, and I have a Wacom Intuos Pro for that. This is just a drawing tablet that I use. After I finish inking the pages of my manga, I tend to scan them in, and you usually need to clean up the scans, add screen tones, or color them in or whatever. But what I use for digital stuff is this tablet. It's a really good tablet. I would recommend it. It's awesome. But yeah, that's all of the stuff that I use. Hey guys, I hope you found the video helpful or at least semi-enjoyable. I try to make it short, sweet, and to the point. just so you know essentially what I use. But if you actually want to check out the manga I'm making, be sure to head on over to Webtoons. I'll link it in the description probably somewhere. I've already made 2 different mangas and you can go and read them there for free, and it's awesome and it's hunky-dory. And if you want access to Hill Surrounded as it's still coming out, I'm releasing approximately 2 pages a week now. Just until chapter 1's actually done, and if you want to be cool and have all the exclusive crud before anybody else does, because you're awesome and neat, then be sure to check out my Patreon. I'll also link that in the description. And that's all I got for now. Bye!